welcome back, YouTube. This is Angli Et Nex, and yes, I am back on Neverwinter. So, to start off some of my new series of videos, I just wanted to start off, obviously, with my main that you've always seen me play, whether you see me on Twitch or seen my other videos on YouTube. I main a paladin, mainly a Devo paladin, so Oath of Devotion, or aka Healadin, or sleazy easy tank, whatever, or easy heals, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to talk about a couple of things in this video. First off, I'm going to do kind of my gist on how the game has changed into Mod 14, and then I'm also going to go into my build currently in the current meta for Mod 14. The game has changed quite significantly, even in like the start of like Tomb of the Nine Gods, and then you went to Cradle of the Death Gods, and now we're into this new dungeon called Castle Ravenloft. Castle Ravenloft is fun. I got my gear, basically all the gear that I could possibly get from the dungeon, or that I want or need from the dungeon, within about a week of getting it unlocked. But that being said, unless you're running with what everyone in the game kind of calls right now like a hot and sweaty group, so really super tryhards, Devos just really aren't wanted. And that's mainly because it makes the group content and group dynamic a little bit different. So most people want a Oath of Protection Paladin, so the main tank, so then you can have 2 DPS and 2 clerics, or a anointed champion cleric and a Templock, with the increase in the Templock buffs and damage. But my fastest runs have been with me as the Devo, as the healer, buffer, power share, baning, everything, and having a tactician guardian fighter as the main tank, having me as the healer, 1 single DPS, and 2 clerics. And it's been fast. Like, my fastest CRL run has been like 26:15, I believe, and it's been faster that way. Most people, that their average time with a prop pally, unless, like I said, they're with an extremely high powered, like very very high DPS, 2 very high DPS, they're averaging 30 plus minutes. And so the dynamic has changed a little bit, especially for pallies, in the sense of now everyone wants power share. Whereas, yes, they wanted it before, but now the focus is so much on power share that they're starting to call paladins like one-jobitins, because basically all they have to do is make sure that their base power is high enough to get to those threshold markers to power share for the DPS. So as of right now, I am just a shade under 16k on my pally, and I'm standing power at over 52,000. And you'll see that when I go through my build and everything like that. But the other thing that people don't realize is that, especially as a Devo pally, I'm keeping everyone alive. I can maintain dungeons even as a Devo. I did it all through T9 if you guys watch me on Twitch. And I'm baning the DPS, which gives them a 30% damage increase. And now with the presence of the new artifacts, I am using the artifact Thirst, which really the only person that uses these now as a main artifact, as an activated artifact, is the Paladin, because you can shield cancel the effect. So it makes it so that the whole group gets, I think it's 16, 14, 16, 18 something percent extra damage. I'll have to look at it. We'll talk about it when I get to the build. But, so I'm doing that instead of the wheel. But that makes one of the clerics have to use the wheel, which most likely they should have one on their bar already, because clerics want power as well, except for Devo or Dios. Dios don't necessarily need power because they don't power share anymore. But just those changes have been really weird, because it's like they're basically telling us that we only have one job, but they don't appreciate, or maybe they don't understand, what all we do for them, especially as a Devo, where I get people coming in to my parties all the time saying, oh, I don't know why people run Devos. And it's like, because it makes everything faster. You don't need as many scrolls of life. I bane you, not just the boss. So I'm baning the DPS instead of just the boss because protection pallies can't bane the DPS, they can only bane the boss. And using Vow of Enmity, every time you hit whatever I have vowed, especially if you're in a boss fight, I'm healing you. So you're essentially healing yourself just by dealing damage. And I'm power sharing. So a little bit of a difference there. I just wanted to kind of explain that because there's been so much backlash and people not understanding exactly what a Devo does. Like a prot pally, I have a spec for both, but a prot pally, your whole job is to stand there with enough temp hit points to not get one shot and take every punch. That's your whole job. Yes, you're power sharing, but that's all passive. You're literally not doing anything else except for standing there and taking the punches. Whereas me, if you've played a Devo Paladin, try and Bane, get 3 stacks of Bane on a TR or an HR. That's the main DPS. It's ridiculously hard. And especially now that I've made it a little bit easier on myself switching from the wheel to thirst, because trying to chase them around and get in a position to give them the fire from the wheel, that's another thing in itself. But now I'm using thirst, so it's a little bit easier. So first off, I'll just show you what I mean by shield canceling thirst. So when you cast it, it does this. And another thing that I'll explain as well is there's new enchantments in mod 14. So there's a new armor enchantment, which is called the Eclipse, and then there's a new weapon enchantment called Prominence. Prominence is crazy, but it gets really crazy when it's trans or unparalleled. Eclipse is crazy. It's kind of actually like like you don't really want it until it's trans or unparalleled, but Prominence is just good like all the way through. It has the highest amount of damage potential, I think, out of any other weapon enchantment right now. And once it gets transcendent, just the things that it does for you is ridiculous. So I'll show you what I mean now that it's off cooldown, how you shield cancel thirst. So you activate it, and so you see what I did there. As soon as I saw those red lines, both the red lines come up, I hit my shield, and I didn't dash, but it will still apply the debuff. So you don't have to dash, even though it says in the tooltip that it only debuffs the enemies that you pass through. But even though you shield cancel and you don't necessarily pass through anybody, it still applies the debuff. So now we'll get into the build a little bit here. There's been, from my last video, which seems like ages ago from my paladin, there's been some changes. A, to further build up the power share, and B, just necessary things, progression in the game. Better items have come out, things like that. So obviously I'm not going to be best in slot because I don't want to pay I think like a total of 5 million to get the full masterwork set. So the neck, belt, main hand, offhand, and the artifact. It's ridiculous how expensive the stuff is. So what you can do, especially as a power share Devo, is get the Pioneer weapons, which I'll show you why. Because when you're in a full group, you gain 1,000 power, defense, recovery, crit strike, and armor pen. So you're gaining another additional 1,000 power on top of your base power, and then you're also gaining 1,000 defense, which gives you more power if you're using Assassin's Covenant like I am, because that creates more power for you. And then obviously recovery, critical strike, and armor pen are just good things to have, especially as a Devo. Having recovery is a nice thing. Armor pen makes you deal a little bit more damage, helps you potentially hold more aggro as well if you're the tank. And then obviously crit strike helps if you're running a protection pally, because the more you crit, the higher your temp hit points goes and the less you have to worry about in the long run. So there's that. The Pioneer weapons. This is the Thirst here. So lunge forward, deal damage to enemies in a line, dealing 28,537 damage, and increasing the target's damage taken by 16% for 8 seconds. So it's hit points, power, and defense. So I'm getting 1,000 power from this, I'm getting 1,000 defense from this, which the 1,000 defense then turns into some power again. So it's nice to have. As you can see, I still have the wheel, still have the cleric sigil, which is power and defense. thus more power. And then I made the switch over. You might have seen it if you watched me on Twitch. I made the switch over to Symbol of Fire for more power, recovery, obviously defense. All three things that are necessary for a Devo Pally. And then the new gear from the new dungeon. My helmet is transmogged as it, but it is actually not. I'm using the guys of the Wolf Clan. You gain 2,000 more power when you're in a party, so that's why I use it. So when I'm in a party, I jump up to. Right now, I'm standing at a campfire around other people, but my base power is 52,000. I'll show you. I'll go in here by myself so you can see my base stats. Once we get through the loading screen. So this is Barovia, the new area for Mod 14, which is really super fun. The lore is great. I love this area. Favorite area by far up to this point. So let's take a look-see here. So base power, 52,400. That's with no pots, no coin, no chains, no nothing. Which the chains is actually a cool thing. That's the thing in my bottom of my D-pad there. So it just adds, it's just a little stat stick, which is nice. You get it from doing the Fane of the Night Serpent in Omu. And you can upgrade it. You can keep upgrading it, which right now I'm only at the second level, but that's because I don't feel like farming Cradle of the Death Gods. But, and you have to go in order. So I have the next two pieces that I need to upgrade it, but I need the one from the Cradle of the Death Gods, and I just don't feel like farming for it. So, at least right now. If I can get a hot sweaty groups to run it a few times so I can collect it, I'll do that. But up to this point, I'm using Coralon's Blood. I'm using the coin, obviously, because that's just another stat stick. The chains, I've got a T-Rex, or you can use the Swarm. The Swarm is actually, I think, best in slot right now because it does a damage debuff and a damage buff. So it debuffs the enemy's damage and then makes you deal more damage to them as well. So it's a little bit better than just what the T-Rex does, which basically just makes them take more damage. But at any rate, T-Rex, Swarm, even the carpet is good. They added some actual debuff buff effects to the carpet where it was just a controlling mount power at the beginning. So now it's actually effective. But back to the build here. So I'm using Guys of the Wolf Clan, and then this is the new gear out of Castle Ravenloft. You can see the equip power. When your health is above 50%, your power is increased by 1,500. That's huge for a power share pally. Just gaining that extra 1,500 all the time pretty much, because there's almost never a point at any dungeon that I'm not below or that I'm not above 50%. Even if I dip below 50%, all I have to do is click my shield and poof, I'm right back to full health. These arms, even though they're not the highest gear score, just like the Guys of the Wolf Clan, Guys of the Wolf Clan is only 450, so it's 100 less item level than the new stuff, but the 2,000 extra power is what you want. These gloves are 10 off the highest gear score, but look how much power they give you. Almost 3,300 extra power off of a pair of gloves. That's ridiculous. And then the boots give you recovery when you're above 50% health, which as a Devo Paladin is huge. Really, for any class, right now adding recovery is a huge thing. Even DPS are starting to stack on recovery just so that they can get their abilities out faster, especially if you're a C-Dub, an HR, or a TR. So Control Wizard, Hunter Ranger, or Trickster Rogue. Recovery is huge. Those three classes also use the Devoted Cleric Sigil most of the time as they're activated as well. And Scourge Warlocks do as well. I just don't think they depend as much on recovery. That's why they use the Sigil of the Devoted more. And then here's the newest thing that I've really added, which I had to get rid of my Tiamat's Orb for Thirst, which broke my heart because that was like my first big purchase ever in the game. I was like, oh my god, I'm spending 300,000 Astro Diamonds on this Tiamat's Orb, but that was in mod like 7. So that was big money back then. Now it's not. And so that was like a nostalgia, like shed a single tear moment for me. But anyhow, I digress. So we'll look at this and I'll show you why, as a power share, you want to use it. Especially if you're a prop pally, you will keep this up 100% of the time. Me, I can keep it up 100% of the time because I have the action point gain and the recovery to do so. So whenever you have a shield or temp HP, your power is increased by 1,000. So as a Devo, this works with your Shield of Faith, so your daily. If you have enough action points, or action point gain rather, and the recovery to ramp everything up, so increase your recovery speed of your encounter powers, you can keep this up 100% of the time, especially when we can pump our right bumper and get action points in battle. That's huge. So that's another 1,000. So I've got the Barovian Cummerbund, which is the belt, and then the Barovian Lavalier, which is the neck piece, which, again, power, defense, deflect. Defense and deflect give me more power. And then the next thing that I changed, which was just the next step up to the next set of gear. Obviously, getting like the Gravestalker rings are going to be best in slot. Getting a rank 4 and a rank 5 are going to be best in slot because they're both double offense and they stack. So Grave Striker or Grave Stalker, can't remember if it's Grave Striker or Grave Stalker, either one. The 5 gives you 1,000 power when you're above 85% health, and the 4 gives you 800 power when you're above 85% health. And those stack. If you had 2 5s, they don't. It only takes 1. So a 4 and a 5 do stack. So those would be best in slot. But these rings are what I'm using right now because they give me power and recovery, and they're double offense. So as you can see, I've basically got Radiance in everything offense, and then I have Azures in pretty much everything defense. And the reason why I'm doing that, obviously, is because Assassin's Covenant makes it so that I can turn my defense, deflect, lifesteal into power. So I'll give you a little bit of rundown of my stats. So I've got Con here. I'm at 20 Con, which I didn't really build into Con. I just have some extra Con because of the new set, the new neck waist artifact set. What I really lost switching from the Charisma belt is the Charisma, so I lost a little bit, about 5% action point gain. So I noticed that, but then also with the boots, the new boots, I was able to ramp up my recovery. So I'm standing at 7,100 recovery, as you can see right over here. 52,400 power. Pretty low on crit, but that's because I don't play my prop pally very much. Armor pen is again low, but I still deal enough damage that it doesn't matter to me at this point. I think once I push above 1,600, I'm going to focus more on armor pen and power, just really trying to ramp that power up there. Defense, obviously, and that's even with the 10% taken off from Assassin's Covenant. Deflect is up there. What I wanted to show you, again, sorry, I went off on a rabbit trail of stats there. This is what the new armor enchantment does at Transcendent, and why I use it on my Devo Pally, I'll explain. So increases your deflect chance by 23%, so you get that 23% no matter what. If you remember before, I was using a Shadowclad, so it was rising stacks, but this is flat 23% all the time, which is huge. Like, I've seen a significant reduction in the damage that I take just by having the flat 23% rather than trying to rely on getting hit with the Shadowclad to increase those stacks. So increased deflection chance by 23%. Whenever your stamina drops below 20%, your stamina is refilled and you no longer deplete stamina for 4 seconds. That's huge. I can hold my shield up in battle for 20 seconds. As a Devo Pally, that's huge. I almost never run out of stamina now, just because of this. So like running a Tomb of the Nine Gods, I can literally just walk into a fight and hold my shield up for the duration of the whole fight almost. If you're with a that's if you're with a not so good group, like with a lower DPS group, walk into a mob, just hold my shield up until everything's dead. Or you go into Orcus, if you've got a little bit of a sweatier group, go into Orcus, pop everything off that you need to pop. So pop your shield, your Rex, your Thirst, and then just hold your shield up and watch him smash away. You'll be healing yourself so you don't get one shot. You'll be reverberating the heals from yourself to everybody else, keeping them alive, and you can just stand there. It's fantastic. I love it. And I think even Tactician Guardian fighters could see a use of this as well, especially with the new dungeon. Just because of the mechanics of the new dungeon, which I won't get into in this video. I may do a CRL tutorial video later on, especially since I'm going to be getting my old group back that I used to stream with. So getting them coming back to the game, they haven't even run it before. So now obviously I'm pretty experienced, pretty seasoned. I've played it on DPS as the main tank and as the Devo. So I know kind of those three roles. The only role that I haven't done it on is Cleric or the DO or the Templock, where they have to take the book. So, which I probably will never do. So, that's another big change as well. This thing, it makes me lazy, is what it does. It makes me real lazy. But it also saves those oopsie moments where my stamina goes down and I get one shot, something like that, and now the group dies because the healer's dead. That just doesn't happen anymore, so that's really nice. But back to stats here. Deflect is increased by 23%, but also basically by 13% because 10% of it gets taken away from Assassin's Covenant. Powers are exactly the same as my last video. I have my dungeoning powers on right now. So when I'm running solo, when I'm running by myself, Radiant Strike on left trigger, Burning Light is generally on my Y, Aura of Courage all the time, Bane in place of Burning Light when I'm in dungeons, Aura of Wisdom when you're in dungeons, O Strike always, because it heals you and everyone else. Bond of Virtue always, and I'll tell you why I use this always, even when I'm soloing. But I'll get there in a minute. I'll tell you why once we get to companions. I'll tell you why. And then Shield of Faith is as my main daily in dungeons, or the Divine Judgment as main daily outside of dungeons. Even in that inside dungeons, sometimes I'll just use it because if I'm getting blasted with haste from the clerics, I can double up my dailies. So I'll do like my shield, pop my shield, and then I'll get my AP back so fast that I'll be able to drop some hammers as well, or butter knives as we call them now, because they don't hit super hard. And then Vow of Enmity, I just use that, of course, as the main spot healing, I guess you could say. Whoever you target, whenever somebody hits that target, it heals them. So that's really nice. A lot of people are like, well, why don't you use Healing Font? Because it's on a on hit basis, it seems like. It's not a constant healing. And for selfish reasons, it doesn't proc any of my burning damage. It does nothing for that. You could use Relentless Avenger if you really, really, really needed AP generation, but you should never need that much AP generation as a Devo, because every time you heal, you're gaining AP, and all you have to do to heal is literally do nothing and sit there and pump your right bumper, or click your shield down, or do any of your other abilities that causes you to heal someone. So there is that. Feats are exactly the same, didn't change anything. So if you saw my last video, I'm not going to run through them all. I'm just going to put it up here and show you what I have. So if you want to pause the video, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do, you can do that. Boons are pretty much exactly the same as before, except I've changed out or I've completed more campaigns since the last time. Um, so I'll just go through them here really quick. Power, defense, res sickness. When I'm running by myself, I use mount speed. And also the instead of the aura of wisdom when I'm running by myself, I use the aura of solitude when I'm doing like my dailies and things like that, just because it increases my damage. And then I won't name off all these, but I'll just stop and show you so you can kind of see what I'm working with here. And I haven't completed all of Tyranny of Dragons yet. It's just a thing. I'm to the point now in the game where I'm trying to work on other characters, and going and doing dailies on my main just doesn't seem like a good use of time to get two extra boons. Like, if I was really that worried about item level, I would do it, but I'm not. And if you guys watch my previous video, I explain all these and I tell you why I use them. But none of this has changed for me. So build is exactly the same. The biggest changes that I made was in the gear itself. And then I haven't finished Jungles of Chol, but I've at least got it mostly started. Got the first three in Jungles of Chol, which I didn't have before, so I'll show you. Obviously throwing them in power. And then I will most likely... I'm kind of in a toss-up right now. I don't know if I want to do Soul Siphon or if I want to do Lingering Curse, because the other two are kind of just, like, at least for my Devo, they're just kind of booty. They don't work for me. Now, I'll probably get backlash for that, but, that's just my personal preference. Everything in this game is personal preference. I'm just telling you what I use and what works for me in my groups. And then, obviously, Ravenloft is new, so stacking up recovery, I'll get 3 of 3 in there. And then, this one is going to be what I'm going for. Most likely. Just because, even though I have low crit, I do crit quite often. So, because my burning also has a chance to crit, so there are times where I'm seeing orange numbers flying around like I'm a control wizard. But some of these others are not bad. Applying a heal over time really isn't necessary. And I don't actively heal another player, it just happens. And then this one might be good for like a HR, just because you stun, daze, hold, whatever root an enemy. And then you could also do this one as well, like especially as a prop pally, taking 10% or more of your max hit points, and with a single blow, you gain power, and it can stack 5 times. So for me, since I'm not a prot, I'll probably take this one. When I do get it on my prop pally, I'll probably take this one, because I will be taking hits. Companions, the things that are new, the Tiger. Obviously, I just got it to Legendary since they fixed the companion tokens, but I'm running a 13, 12, ready to go to 13, and 12 ready to go to 13. The same rings as I have on myself, and then I'm running full recovery on my companion, because I'll gain more from it, and I don't even remember what I proc to. I think I proc to like 21,000 or something crazy like that when I have everything going. So, and that's recovery, and then more than that for power. I think I gained 21,000 power or more. But yeah, full silveries. I didn't put an 12 on the neck piece in the defense slot, obviously because it's a defense slot. So, but once I get a double offense neck, that will turn into a 12 silvery as well. And then this guy right here is why I use Bond of Virtue all the time, because with that constantly pulsing, I see, I think it's called Wild Hunt, is when it pops up. Wild Hunt, you gain that increased damage. So the 5% increase, or the 5% chance to increase your damage by 10%. I see that pop up so much because that thing is constantly pulsing and it reverberates around. So I see it pop up a lot. So that's why I keep Bond of Virtue on even when I'm doing my solo stuff. So, and then obviously I've got Air Archon, and this is just for me. Like, if I really wanted to, I could throw on some AP companions or some straight power companions and really ramp up my power share. But this is just for me because I'm generally the second or third DPS on the damage board in every dungeon that I do, and I feel like it would be a detriment to the team to not at least help, since I'm already in that position anyway. So using wind, using earth, I'm not using fire, but that's because I would lose either my owlbear, which makes me deal more significantly more damage, or I would lose this guy, which also makes me lose more damage. But I could pick from any one of these. Like, I could throw on my raptor, I could throw on my con artist and use it as my bonding companion. If I really wanted to do damage, I could pull out my shadow demon and let him hit stuff for 60k a pop. If I needed to, I could put on my fire archon and get that extra burn below 50%. Water archon is one of the most useless ones in the game anymore, but I got these back when archons first came out, so I was like, shoot, I got the whole set, let's get it. Panther's not really worth anything on this guy, because I don't ever knock anything prone unless I'm using Relentless Avenger, which is never. I put this on for PvP, gain that extra control resist. And then the Energon, I have that for when I'm tanking. And then mounts, I have, this is what I'm using. Obviously, don't hate me because I don't have full purples, and they're not actually purples that are giving me the stats that I need, and blah, 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 blah. This is just stuff that I've gotten from packs and this and that. But everything is right. To my opinion, every bonus that I have is right. Double Assassin's Covenant, more power share. Cavalry's Warning. Whenever I activate my mount power, my power, recovery, armor penetration, critical strike, defense, deflect, regeneration, and lifesteal are increased by 10%. And because I'm increasing each of those other defensive properties by 10%, I'm gaining more power. Another Assassin's Covenant, Shepherds of Devotion. Every class, no matter what you are running, should have Shepherd's Devotion on when you're running a dungeon, especially endgame content, T9 and above. Shepherd's Devotion is a must. I don't care if you're a DPS. I don't care if you're the biggest swinging Gwyff in the game. Use Shepherd's Devotion because it helps you, helps the group, makes the runs go faster because you have so much damage resistance and movement speed, so you're just moving through the dungeon faster. And if you use this, little pro tip here, if you use this, it keeps you alive. You can't deal damage when you're dead. Use Shepherd's Devotion. Every class. I don't care what class you are. Use Shepherd's Devotion. Gladiator's Guile. Another one that's not necessary to complete dungeons, but necessary in the higher end groups because you have to keep up. So this gives you the extra movement speed when you're above 75% stamina, which is basically all the time in transition for me. So that's, for me, that's a must because I'm running the endgame content. If you don't have it, you just fall behind. And for a healer to fall behind, that's a big no-no. But other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. My characters are coming along nicely. Working on some other characters right now. My control wizard is once I get Soraka here to 16k or above, I'm gonna start really investing in my control wizard because in mod 15 she is going to be fantastic, as if she isn't already. I've switched some things up on her, So I will be putting out videos on her as well for my new builds. But other than that, guys, that is it for me. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you have any comments, leave comments down below. And just stay tuned for more content. Be sure to check me out on my Twitch channel as well. I will be starting streaming again here relatively soon. I'm just working on some coding errors that I have. So that will be coming very soon. But I just wanted to get some more content out to you guys. But I love you guys. Stay tuned for more content and have a good one.